everyone, it's KK Bricks, and I would like to do a review today of the set number 6054 from Lego from 1988, which was the Forestmen's Hideout. This set has been re-released today as a gift with purchase on lego.com, and so we'd like to build it and do a quick review. Let's get into it. Here are the instructions, set 6054. These were under the title of Legoland, but were part of the Castle series back in the day. This set came with 2 minifigures, and as I mentioned before, relatively simple set of instructions, 23 steps total. As you went through them back then, the instructions would call out a couple of pieces when they were harder to see because they didn't often rotate or flip around the directions at the time. They also didn't call out the actual pieces that were used, so you had to go through and find each of these. And back then, they didn't have numbered bags. So you would dump out all the parts onto the table, basically rummage through them and find each of the pieces, which made these sets quite challenging at the time. Each of the subsequent steps will show the new pieces as highlighted in a slightly more glossy type look, and the previous pieces are dulled out or grayed, but the look is very subtle. As you go through, the set obviously grows pretty quickly, so the amount of real estate on the page grows to basically a full spread towards the end of the document. It gets a lot more complicated as you get towards the top of the set, and I find it's a lot easier to basically follow the steps kind of from one side to the other so that you can pick up all the little pieces that are different from the one before. But it was a lot of looking back and forth to see what was added per each step. As you get to the top, the foliage is added, the roof is added, and then all of the decorations were added at the very end. Okay, let's get into it. So what's interesting about this set is how they only show the parts that you need on the step. Beyond that, there isn't any additional information. And then the next step just grays out a bit of what was in the previous step, but still shows the other steps before. So it's a little harder to read than modern day sets where they highlight everything for you. But overall, as a kid, these were fairly simple to put together. So, and the first couple of steps obviously are very easy, as there's very few parts that are added to each of the steps. So now we're up to step 4. Got a lot of 1x1s here to kind of build up the base. And here we go, and this is just a bunch of 1x1 tiles, clips. There we go. So this makes a nice square base, in which the 2 halves kind of open up there on a 6x12 base plate, 2 of them together. So it forms a nice square, or obviously a long linear platform. These were some cool parts at the time. The panel, kind of quarter side panels, used in Castle a bunch. And obviously helped to build up the set faster. But I just thought they were very cool pieces. They didn't come in a lot of sets at the time, so. Let's see, we got a bunch of 1x1s with a clip, and 2 more 1x1s here. So, there we go with that. Another 1x1. So, still fairly simple and easy to build here. Things will start to more tricky. Oh, this actually needs a couple 1x1s underneath it. Let's see. 2 1x1s, stack them. And then the branch pieces, which I believe were pretty unique at the time. There weren't a lot of leaf pieces, branch pieces, all that that we get today that we easily take for granted, but were very cool parts to have at the time, for sure. So I believe there's an extra 1x1 on top of that. And this goes up there. So as you can see already by step 6, we have the base trunk of the tree. There is an opening over here, which allows access into the center of the tree and the 2 halves on either side from the hinge point. Let's see, next we do another hinge. Now, at the time, these were the only hinges that were available. There were no plate hinges, it was only brick hinges. So they were rather large and clunky, and it was nice when they did come out with some relatively thinner pieces. But obviously these worked well at the time. And like I mentioned earlier, a lot of parts, it was hard to see exactly what you're looking for in each of these sets. So sometimes they would call them out. So like here's a 1x3. Connects these 2 panels and the tree branch together, and that kind of locks everything into place there. But for the most part, fairly obvious. What I typically did was always read kind of from either left to right or right to left on each step so that I could follow along and make sure I didn't miss anything. So 3x3 facet on the corner, a 1x1 just sits here at the top. There was, let's flip this around just for a second. Corner kind of inverted slope, which goes here. 1x2, that holds the branch down even further. 1x3 plate on the end of it. Some inverted slope. And then corner piece. I think there was one more inverted piece. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so there we go with that. And then next we build up the platform. So this goes over here. And then we are looking at, let's see, there's a 2x6 plate. And this is the light gray of the 80s and I guess a little bit into the 90s. This was replaced by the light bluish gray, as they did light blue and dark blue gray. So this was the only gray at the time that we had. And when you compare the two under light, it definitely makes a difference. Let's see. Oh, this was supposed to be over here actually. This is now front, and this part is over there. Building this kind of back to front a little bit, so a little more difficult from my perspective. Okay, now 2 more panels. Gosh, how did I get in there? A little tricky to install, but there you go. Oh, that was upside down. Here's quarter corner panel. And then, now this one we have a branch that has some pieces, slope pieces 1x1. That slides right in here. There we go. And then we build up the gray parts of the platform. So this will be the Forestmen hideout platform area. And the new set's relatively the same. There's very little space on the interior, kind of a second story element. So by the end of the second set of pages here, we have a little bit of branches sticking out. So this tree shape is starting to take form. The platform is taking form back here. There's a little cavity on the back side. Moving on step 11, we've got 1x3, 1x2. Okay, and then over here, 1x4 plate. Already broke my own rule, jumping around. Corner plates, which I think were also relatively new at the time. Hadn't been out in a lot of sets. And, oops, another 1x4 plates, that's correct. There we go. Okay, moving on here, we have, okay, this is going to go that direction. So another branch piece sticking out. A couple 1x4s. building up the walls, some headlight bricks, the corners. It's where the shields go. And I'm actually not going to install them just yet, but I'm going to install them a little ahead of time because they get tricky once all the branches are on top of this thing. Then we have a clip plate with the sword. And gosh, when I was a kid, all these little accessory pieces that came from minifigures were just some of my favorite parts and pieces to collect. I loved all the shields and the swords and the spears and hats and hair pieces and everything that kind of came with the Lego minifigures at the time. There wasn't a lot, not as much as what we have now. And all the faces, of course, are yellow with a smiley face, so guess nobody in the world of Lego is grumpy or unhappy at the time. So, okay, I'm gonna grab the shield pieces, which are actually from later on in the set. These were printed, and I believe the new ones they brought back the same design, but I don't have the set yet, so we'll review that at a later date. Okay, we have a double inverted or a 2x2 inverted slope there. And then we have the last hinge piece, which kind of helps. Oh, is it going on? Yeah. Helps kind of tie the entire trunk together, give it a lot more stability once that's up there. Couple more cylinders. Do a second row of cylinders here. Around the top. Back here, I'll bring this a little further forward. It's easier to see. So all the cylinders are the 1x1, which is back here, corner. See, and this is where things start to get a little difficult, where they put parts in front of other parts, and the angle that they showed. They didn't do a lot of rotation at the time in the instructions. So sometimes it's not as very clear. They could have maybe broken it out into a couple of extra, but I'm sure they were trying to save on printing costs and the length of instructions and everything else. So, okay, up here we have the slope. Another slope going opposite direction in the corner. This was also a very unique part, which was a double inverted slope, which is 1x3. Didn't see a lot of these at the time for sure. I don't think we saw many of them much after that either. So there's two 1x1 plates stacked behind that. Another just single inverted slope. And we have a branch. Sits out here in the corner. And down in here is a slope. Yep, get that all tightened in there. And are there any other steps? No. Another rogue 1x1 piece here somewhere. Not exactly sure, but looks like we have everything for this part here. As I mentioned earlier too, this was kind of a time frame where you didn't have numbered bags. You would dump all the pieces out onto the table and just start building. So you really had to be mindful of where you were in the steps, what was the next piece that went on, so that it was easy to follow along and not get lost in the weeds of the design. So let's see, this guy goes over here. Then we have a 1x3 inverted plate over there, a brick over there, sorry. I think that's everything. And we have a 2x2 sits up here at the top next to that. Oh, sorry, hang on. That is supposed to be moved over one. Right there. And we have a 1x2 or slope, 1x2 plate, kind of tying this part together. And then it starts to become a little bit of a MC Escher design in a way, where there's multiple parts hanging off. I think this actually goes on this side. There we go. 1x6 plate ties those together, and a 1x4. There's a little bit of an overhang here, like cantilever off the edge. Gosh, the piece is rather dusty there. Another sloping piece over here that connects branches, so a little bit of rigidity. So now as the parts, what was really clever was how a lot of these parts and pieces had some clearance to them. So when it closed, it had more of a organic shape to it than when it was open, and things were kind of splayed out. So a series of plates on 1x2s and 2x1s, or 1x1s, sorry, 2x1s. There are some 1x3 bricks back here, so we're starting to form up the roof. Those are holding off the back side. 1x2s towards the front side. And then start to jump into the foliage. So we have large leaf up here. Let's see. There's a little bit of a smaller leaf up there. Large leaf in the front. Another large leaf over here. And then where's this one go? Straight out over here. There we go. So step 18. So step 19. And we have 1x3 inverted. So this one goes around. Let's see. Goes here. With an arch there. Another. Let's see. Hang on a second. Okay, so 1x2 holds that arch in. A slope holds the top part in. 1, 2, 1x2, and a 1x2 black. Then we use a bunch of 1x3 plates, and these kind of snap all the branches together and hold the leaves, hopefully falling off of the set. So there should be another one here. Oops, there we go. Another one here, and the last one here. Oops. Well, I guess they don't always hold things on. These parts are getting old. They are from 1988 after all, so gosh, 30 something years old already. Okay, so that was step 19. Step 20, we get another, let's see, leaf part that goes here. Oh, this one was actually supposed to go the opposite direction. Okay, fix that. There's another slope part, put those two together. Now this leaf part actually connects kind of backwards, so to speak, or it connects from the front part of the leaf, I should say. Top of this gets an arch, a shallow arch, a couple of 1x2s. So let's see, we've got those two on either side. And wow, this thing's really kind of come together now. So there we go. Where we are. Then we put together the roof, and the roof is made up of, remember the 1980s automobiles and vehicles of the time, they basically had a plate with a hinge plate on it, and then this is just a 4x4 plate. So let's open this back up. And this connects on, oops, daisy. This connects on the back here, and oh, a little stiff, but there we go. In between, there were vine pieces at the time. These were very cool to have back in 1988, 1990. They showed up in some of the early Star Wars sets. Like I remember the Attack on Naboo, or a couple other really cool sets. Indiana Jones, I believe. Okay, so, and then we have some more leaf pieces. So these are two go together, and these guys go on the back of this, and this one is off on an angle. So, kind of like so. So I'd say overall it's getting a nice tree-like shape to this structure. And let's see, what are we? We're missing something here. Okay, so now we use 1x2 plates to fasten all the tree parts together. So put this guy in here, tack that in place. This guy up here, tack that guy in place, and what's the other one? It's missing something. I think. Nope. Oh, it was this part underneath. This actually gets tacked on there. So these guys are just like, whoa! Fragility here. Okay, tacks back on to there. And these guys tack back onto there. So there we go. And then finally, we have all of the accessories. So we close this guy up. There's a tree in the back. There is a tree in the front. There's a simple archer's arrow. Unfortunately, this is supposed to be in black, the hinge piece. Could not find it in my Lego set. And I'm unfortunately missing one of the Forestmen minifig characters. So, but I have purchased another one on Bricklink, so it's on its way. So by the time I get the other gift with purchase, hopefully these will be a complete set here. And the missing parts I've also ordered. Oops, it is. Let's see. Go back up there. So one of the guys hanging off. Also, unfortunately, missing a red flag piece. I have a yellow substitute. And back then in the day, they did not have gold pieces, so they used yellow studs, basically. Put them in the barrel. I believe the new set does have the gold pieces. So this does show that it's just out like standing around, but we could, nicely put this on the back. And then there's a couple of spears. These kind of clip on to the sides here and here. So these guys were ready for action should someone come and attack them. So, and there we have it. So this is the complete set. So, it was a very cool set. This was about 6 inches or so in height. So not very tall, about 201 pieces, as I mentioned earlier. Very interesting set how it opened up to have a nice kind of play function on the front. You got 2 minifigures. At the back, you could have a little bit of space to place someone on the lookout tower. There was a secret opening on the side of the tree. There's a little bit of extra space up here. But, not much all in all, but, nice, relatively cool display piece. Goes well with the entire castle series. So, there you go.